Today we have what I think it's the most important video of this series. I'm gonna show you 7 mistakes that I made, plus some instructions that for me were a bit obscure. I hope you have here all the information you need for your final installation and that it's so clear. But if you have any other doubts, leave your questions in the comments and I'll try to answer to the best of my knowledge. And if necessary, I can make a video with all the frequent questions that all of you have. To make it easier for you, I'm always correlating each procedure with the instructions, the diagrams, close-up images, for you to know exactly where you need to connect each of the wires. But this means that it's going to be a long video, very detailed, and feel free to jump to the parts that you're most interested. As usual, I'm leaving timestamps in the description, then you can easily go to the chapter that you're most interested. You will also see that I try to make it the most didactic possible, so you will see a linear sequence of procedures that you would follow in the Arduino instructions webpage. But this means that if I made a mistake and I corrected later, I'm bringing that solution from the future. So it may be a bit weird to see a wire being connected to a machine that was close to finished, and in the next scene, another wire being connected to the machine in an earlier state. But it's just to make it easier for you to understand, and because you will probably follow the procedures in the Arduino webpage, and then you will see this video in a linear sequence. So introduction made, let's get started. And I'm not gonna show you how to open the machine because I showed in my previous video about the PIE installation. I'll leave a card here, you can check, but it's pretty easy. You just remove the 2 screws here on the top plate. And when you open, remember to disconnect the ground before starting your modifications. You don't wanna break that wire, okay? I already identified each of the connectors according to the instructions in the Arduino website. If you open your machine, you're looking at the front on the top. They labeled the connectors as 7, 3, and 1. Under those 3 connectors, you have then the P78, P56, P34, and P12. Then under those 3, we have 8, 6, and on the other end 2. In the middle, we don't have anything. Then we have the labels for the heating element. So on the left side, we have H3 on the top, H1 on the bottom. On the right side, H4 on the top, H2 on the bottom. If you look at the Arduino instructions, this image is a bit conflicting. So I put this table upside down so that you can see the connectors 1, 2, and 3 in the same orientation. And then you will see that the heating elements are labeled as 3 instead of 2, 1 instead of 4, 4 instead of 1, and 2 instead of 3. It will not make a difference in your installation. You can follow this image and you will be fine. But it's just an information for you to not be in doubt when you check the instructions, okay? This is the steam thermostat that is labeled SA and SB. The Brute thermostat was removed and I installed my thermocouple. I'm not gonna show how I did because I did in the installation. You can also check there, it's here, the thermocouple. You will have ideally to remove the boiler to install it. The pump is also labeled. This is the F, this is the PB. The PB is the one that is single wired. F is the one that has 2 wires coming to the pump. It comes from the solenoid valve. This is the configuration in the Gadia Classic, okay? In the Gadia Classic Pro, it may be different, so always check the schematics. When you remove the Brute thermostat, you will have 2 connectors, and then you need to label as BA and BB. The order is not important, but just label it, okay? And I put all the connectors back in the original position so that we can follow the guide in the Arduino webpage, okay? I'm following the stock wiring integration, and if we scroll down, you will see the schematics for the Gadia Classic Pro and the Gadia Classic. Mine is Gadia Classic. Always check the wiring and try to understand how things are connected here. Let me make a pause and show you the wiring. So this is the kit that comes from Peak Coffee. You will receive a pack with the high voltage wires and a pack with the low voltage wires. To make it easier for you, I labeled each of the wires already. We have a jumper for the Brute thermostat that I labeled as BA and BB. It's male on both ends. We have 2 wires that are for the SSR. We have the males in one end, spade males, and fork on the other end. The fork goes to the SSR, and the males are going to the connectors of the steam thermostat. Then we have the wires that will go to the 3 PLN in your board. One is female on both ends, and one end is going to the pump, the other to the P in the PCB. A second wire is male in one end and will be connected to the P12 in the machine and to the line in the PCB. We have this one that is male in one end and is connected to the PB in the pump and to the 3 in the PCB. And we have this piggyback connector that is connected to the neutral in the Gadia Classic, the piggyback end, and the female in the N in the PCB. In the low voltage kit, this is the cable that I'm going to use for the hardware scale. You will receive a thermocouple type K, and this is the most important wire. It will go to the J7 in your PCB, and we have the 3 low voltage wires that will go to the switch in your machine. So 1, 3, P12 and P34. Following the instructions in the Gaadrino website, the first thing that we are going to connect is the jumper for the Brute thermostat. Now the pump. Okay, so I remove the wire PB from the pump, and I'm connected the male called PB, and this will go to the 3 in the PCB. Okay, so I made a huge mistake here. Plugged the piggyback here in the neutral, but it's in the pump. And this is the connector F that was in the pump. Okay, so I'll put the piggyback here in the F, and then I need to somehow send it back to the pump. Then we have the cable with the 2 female ends. One is going to the P in the PCB, the other goes in the original place where the PB was connected. The next is the SSR. So we have here the positive and negative that will go to the PCB, and in this case I already have it connected because I did in my bench test. So the orange is in the positive, the black is in the negative. These are the 2 forks that I'm going to connect to the SSR in the 1 and 2. It doesn't matter the order. And those 2 cables are going to the steam thermostat, to the connectors that were connected to the steam thermostat. Steam thermostat A and B. In your kit from Peak Coffee, you also receive some zip ties. So I think it is time to organize a bit the wires, because you will have to leave the high voltage cables apart from the low voltage cables. It may cause some interference. The recommendation is to put the high voltage on one side and the low voltage on the other side. Now I'm going to fix the SSR to the frame. Okay, now you can remove the thermostat if you want. I'll leave it here for now. Now we are going to disconnect some switches. The 2 here on the top and the 2 underneath. So I remove 1 and 3, and now I'm going to remove P12 and P34. As you're going to see in the future, I was not being able to read the pressure because I forgot to remove this number 2. So I'm going to remove it now, and then we are going to continue. So now I'm going to connect to the low voltage wires. Okay, so let's connect to the P12 and P34. Now the 3 and 1. So 1 is here, 3 is here. And this cable will go to the PCB. I organized a bit the cables here with a zip tie, and I left this P12 that will go to the line in the PCB. So the spade male goes to the P12, the original connector that was connected to the switch, and then it will go to the line. Those connectors that we removed, I don't want to let it loose. Now the pressure transducer. This is not in the instructions, but I wanted to add some Teflon tape to prevent leakage. I put maybe 5 turns here, always to the right hand side. You need to add this O-ring here. The instructions is hand tight and maybe close by a quarter turn more. There's a gap here and it's expected. Now we need to cut this hose that is connected to the pump and to the boiler. It's a rigid one, the PTFE tube. In the Gaggia Classic Pro is a braided hose. Then we need to cut it closer to the boiler, but it should be low, and the T will be positioned in a way that it needs to be vertical. So the tube should be more like this. I think I'm gonna use this plier. It's a small one. I'll connect first to the pump. Okay, now I connected to the pump and to the boiler. This other end will go to the pressure transducer. I'm cutting because they say that we need between 20 and 25 centimeters. You can see that it's not perfect, but it should be as straight as possible, okay? Personally, I don't like those quick release connections. You should just cut your tube straight and press to the end and you should be fine. But in my case, I had a leakage and I had to disassemble my installation. I tried a few times. I cut this hose a few times to make a very straight cut. And I'm pretty sure that I was connecting to the end. I was hearing that click in the end of the connection. But I prefer the threaded connections. I'm gonna leave the link in the description in case you want to adopt also. It's a bit more difficult to install because you need some space for the wrench to tighten the connections, the threads, but it's doable. I didn't mind. I didn't have any problems. It's also important to say that many people succeeded using the quick release connections. In the Discord, I mentioned this issue, and the developers said that they are using those connectors for a long time, for years, disconnecting and connecting multiple times, and they're not having any issues. So maybe it's me. I don't know if I don't have the right skills. Maybe I should buy the hose cutter. It's cheap, and it maybe will allow me to make more straight cuts and not having those leakages. But I don't know, with me, I never had any leakage with the threaded connectors, the threaded fittings. And I had a few times with those quick release, not only in the Gadrino modification. Sometimes I was successful, sometimes not. So I don't know, I don't trust. Luckily, I had one T in my Ranchillo Silvia, so I disassembled and I used these connectors in my Gaggia to finish the installation, and it worked. Another recommendation: do your installation when you have time, when you have peace. I was rushing a bit because I have limited time to do those modifications. I try to do when my son is not at home for safety reasons, because I need concentration. I cannot have a kid interrupting me every 5 minutes to ask questions. Also, I don't like to leave lots of tools and components around the house. And if I'm always interrupted by a child, the chances of forgetting something around are higher. I'm working with high voltage, with a boiler that may be hot, glasses, ceramics. So I prefer to do those things when my son is not at home. Suddenly I discovered that I was having a leakage and I was a bit under pressure to finish. This doesn't help, of course. So spare some time, do it when you have peace to work. And then if you have any problems, you will feel less pressured. In my case, in addition to the time pressure, because I was committed to deliver this video to you guys, I was also frustrated because everything was going well. I was not expecting to have issues. This was the last mile. And when I was about to finish, this problem happened. So I was a bit frustrated. It doesn't help as well. But whenever you have those issues, keep calm. You're gonna find the solution. You may need a good night of sleep. You can ask some help in the Discord. So when I discovered the leakage, I decided to stop and continue another day. Then I thought about possible causes, possible tests that I could make to find the problem, and it worked well. So I had the idea of removing the T from the Ranchillo Silvia. I checked if I could connect or not, if I had space. I removed the foam from the pressure transducer to check if the leakage was not in the pressure transducer. It wasn't. This was the lucky part of the installation. It was in the T, and I had a spare T. And then I replaced it, tested, and it wasn't leaking anymore. Now the pressure transducer should be connected to the T, and it should be lower than the T. And they also recommend adding some foam here to avoid the vibration, the noise, and also because some of the pressure transducers are sensitive to the vibration. I have this one that is for my Ranchillo Silvia boiler. It's a spare. I don't have anyone that is better, so I'm gonna use it. Okay, so the issue was really the T. It was leaking. Then I changed it by this other version that has threaded connectors, and it is not leaking anymore. And I was so confident that I attached the housing to the frame, and I had put a foam to protect the transducer from the vibrations. But the foam was also making it more difficult to see if there was any leakage in this connector here. I think I was lucky that it was not the case. It was only in the T. Now it's solved, so I'm gonna put the foam to protect the transducer. I'll fix the enclosure to the frame as well as the connector for the scale. Another thing that I noticed is that there was not enough space for the funnel to fit inside. The lack of space for the funnel made the T to become in contact with the steam pipe. When I inserted the funnel inside the machine, it was pressing the T and it was bending towards the steam pipe. It got super hot, and then to prevent this issue, I added some foam for thermal insulation, both in the T and in the steam pipe. But in your case, ideally, take into consideration the space needed for the funnel when you are measuring the size of the tube and the position of your T, okay? They recommend to protect the cables that will go out of the machine because it may be damaged by these ventilation openings that are a bit sharp here. So I used electrical tape to protect my cables. Those are the two that will go to the outside of the machine for the PCB. One for the display, the other for the ST-Link. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'll put inside the housing. This is the housing that I downloaded from Printables. So you just slide the board here. Now I'm gonna connect all the wires. First, the thermocouple. Okay, so the touchscreen is in the J1. Here. Now we have pressure transducer in the J6. Okay. Switches in the J7. Scales in the J8. Yes, I'm gonna leave the connector for the scales already in place because I'm gonna install it later, right? SSR in the J9. Okay, now I think I can close my board and I need to organize a bit the cables. Quick intervention. This is the moment that you should test everything before connecting the housing to the frame, the scale connector, and adding the foam to protect your pressure transducer, your T, your steam pipe, like I did. And before testing, a few recommendations. First, I think you saw that I used this power strip that has a double circuit breaker here. The real life test never happened, and I didn't short circuit on purpose, but this is an extra protection for my house appliances. Some of my colleagues, they had accidents, short circuits, when they modded their machines. They were installing PIDs, and the circuit breaker of the house went down, and you may damage your home appliances, your fridge, your stove, expensive appliances. This is something that I bought to prevent those accidents, and you may want to have one as well. I'll leave a link in the description in case you want to buy, but it's not mandatory, okay? If you're super careful, you may not need, but I prefer to be on the safe side. Second, during your tests, your boiler may be empty and you may damage the heating element. So my recommendation is to set the temperature in your Gadrino to, I don't know, 9, 0, any low temperature, so that the heating element is not activated by the SSR and you don't damage your boiler. This is especially important if you have a Ranchillo Silvia, because the heating element is inside the boiler, and without water it may get damaged very easily. Third, now you're gonna work with your machine open and high voltage inside. It is a shock hazard, so if you don't know what you're doing, this is the time that you should stop and ask for help before continuing. Now, when you turn on your machine, you should see the same that we observed during the bench tests. So let me do it very quickly. Activating my circuit breaker, turning on my Arduino. You will see here that during the startup, there is a build number, but if you downloaded a zip file, like I did, because Platform.io was not cloning all the files, what you will observe in the screen is a no git. And this is perfectly fine. I was concerned because I wasn't seeing a number. And then I went to the Discord and I saw that this is normal, okay? The second thing that you need to observe is the message filling boiler. Right after, you will hear the pump working for a few seconds. Then you should see the temperature reading here. And it's gonna change because the boiler is getting hot. Now we need to remove air bubbles in the pipes. And for that, you will follow the machine fill procedure in the Arduino web page. Now I'm going to brew, manual. You set it to about 1 millimeters per second. And with the group head open, you fill the boiler for 2 minutes. This is also the moment that you can check if there's any leakage inside your machine and fix it. You can also use a blind basket to check if you're getting any pressure reading. And before closing the machine, check also if you're leaving space for the funnel. As you're gonna see in a while, I also made this mistake when I refixed the housing to the frame, and then I had to redo. So I went to the manual mode and I set the flow to 8 milliliters per second, and let's see how much pressure we'll get with a blind basket in the portafilter. Yeah, so I'm not seeing the pressure being read. Let's try the automatic mode. No pressure built. Yeah, it's not reading the pressure, so I have to troubleshoot the pressure transducer. So what happened? First I thought the wire was disconnected, or maybe that there were some bubbles in the pipe, or I don't know, the tube might be twisted. So I opened the machine, I checked everything, I disconnected and reconnected the hose, but I didn't find the issue. The connector was very well placed. Then I opened a help thread in the Discord. By the way, it works very well. I got responses in less than 24 hours and they are very precise, they're sharp on their comments, and I was always able to find the issues just with some questions that they made. So I really recommend using the Discord. But back to the point, I don't know if you noticed, but this light was flicking. And this indicates that there's some current passing here, and it shouldn't. So this was the first question that was made. And then another user said that definitely my electrical installation is wrong. So I revised everything, checked all the procedure, and yes, I forgot to remove the connector number 2 in the brew switch. I removed, and now everything is fine. So I'm gonna fix the housing of my PCB close to the wall here. I'm gonna use double face tape. This connector for the scale, I'm also gonna use double face tape to place it on the wall of the frame. And let me organize a bit. No, I forgot to connect the PLN. Okay, so let's connect. And finally the 3. Closing the housing again. I put my housing here on the back wall. Removing again the housing and putting it back because I wasn't able to close my machine. It was obstructing. So I'm gonna place it more at the bottom again, like I was doing before. So here we have the thermal insulation that I added. This is a foam that is used to make the boiler insulation, so it is thermal resistant. Now the T and the steam pipe are protected, and you can see that I use the same foam to protect the pressure transducer, but now to protect from the vibration. So here we have the housing and the connector for the scale fixed to the frame. And I also used some tape to let the space free for the funnel to go here I didn't want anything blocking the way. So I think I'm good to go now. Don't forget to connect the ground to the lid. Now I'm turning the machine on, waiting for the filling boiler message to appear. I'll bring the temperature down and then go to the manual brewing, set to 1 milliliters per second, and fill the boiler for 2 minutes. Okay, so now the recommendation is to put some glue here to fix the nuts to the housing. Let's do that. So I added the glue only where the nuts are gonna be placed. Then the screws are to hold the nuts in place until the glue dries. The original lid was not fitting. I measured and it's 1.1 millimeters larger than the space here. So I removed 1.1 millimeter and now it's okay. Another warning about the 3D printed parts. I have a 3D printer, but if you're ordering from a third party, especially if not from the authorized suppliers, if you're buying from someone that will print for you in your country, you may want to use a large caliper to measure the dimensions before ordering the parts. In my case, the plate for the screen was 1.1 millimeters larger than it should. For me, it was easy to fix. In 1 hour, I can print a new one. But in your case, you may have to wait for a few days to get a new one. And you will have to pay for another part because it's not their fault. They printed exactly the same file that you told them to print. But if the dimensions are not correct, you will have to pay for the new one. And I checked in the Discord. It was not the first case that it happened. It seems that it's related to some models of Gadia Classic, but it's not clear to the designer why in some cases the dimensions are different. However, I sent my file with the corrected dimensions to the designer, and I think soon he will upload also this version. But if you need this file before that, leave a comment and I'll upload temporarily this file to my profile in MakerWorld or on Printables. But I'll upload only if needed and if not yet updated in the original design, because it's a very minor modification and I don't want to deviate traffic from the original model. The designers, they earn points in those platforms and they can exchange those points for products like filaments. And then I think it's not fair to upload a remix because of this very minor correction. I don't think it's fair. To fix the lid to the screen plate and make this hinge, you need a piece of filament less than 10 centimeters that you're gonna put inside. And then you will need to use a soldering iron to melt a bit. It's very quick, just touch, just 1 or 2 seconds touching each of the sides to melt a bit, and it's done. If you don't have a soldering iron, you can use a heated nail. But if you're in another country and asking people to print for you, remember to ask them to send 10 centimeters of filament for you to be able to make the hinge, okay? First, we're gonna insert in the front, then it goes to the back of the housing. To fix the screen, you have the back plate and the front plate. Now, we're gonna insert the cable through the back of the back plate and connect it to the screen. Then, fit the screen to the back plate, snap the front plate, and screw the bolts to fix it to the screen plate. On the back of the plate, you will see a groove. Fix your cable inside this groove, and after putting your screen plate in position, there will be an access cable that you can send back inside your machine. Okay, let's test. Filling boiler, okay. Then if I click here in the 39 grams, I can stop and wait, and I can use my dose. For example, I can set for 19 or 20. I'll leave 19. The original is 18. And I can use the weight to calculate the stop, or I may set the override. So instead of stopping at 38, it's going to stop at 39. But this is using the predictive scale, and then it will try to estimate how much water is being pumped into the group, and then soaked, absorbed by the coffee, and extracted. Which means that it will depend on the coffee that you're using, the grind size, and then it won't be very precise. You may calibrate for one coffee, but we are gonna use the hardware scale as soon as I install it. Another thing that you can do is maybe set the weight to 50 grams, and then you manually stop. And here you have different profiles. When you switch, the target temperature changes as well. And then you can go here to the brew and change your pre-infusion, soaking, the profiling for each of the profiles that you have. And then when you change, just save your new definitions. I'm gonna use the traditional profile. It's called the UUU. I don't know why they gave this name. If you know, put in the comments. But the temperature that I set is 94 degrees for the brewing. The default temperature for steaming is 155. I'll leave it as is. And let's brew a shot. Okay, let's try. Pressure is going up. And we've got 36.3 grams. I wanted 39, I got 36. Let's try. Not bad. For a first shot, it's great. As you saw, there are a lot of details. You need to follow the instructions in the official webpage. You can use this video as a guide, but if you have any issues, just go to Discord, open a help thread like I did. They are super supportive. You just need to do your homework and do a quick search before, because your question may have already been answered. And as you saw, I did several mistakes. I'm just an average guy, a hobbyist like you. Maybe I have some more experience modifying some machines. Maybe I have, I don't know, some time more in the hobby, but I'm not an expert. And I was able to do it. It was my first time. And I hope that now you are more confident to do yourself. And if there's something that was not clear, put your question in the comments. If there are too many questions, I can create a video specific to answer all the doubts. And in the next video, I'm gonna show you how to install your hardware scale, okay? If this video was helpful, please give your like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.